Safety Doc Podcast with author, radio host, and nationally recognized safety expert, Dr. David Perrodin. Join us each week as we discuss the best and most bizarre practices in safety preparation and crisis response. Follow Dr. Perrodin on Twitter at SafetyPhD. And remember, the truth will keep you safe.
Hey everyone, it is your good friend the Safety Doc from down here in the North Star recording studio, where it is a brisk 61 degrees this evening. And today we are going to be talking about community civic organizations vanishing. Well, kind of vanishing. They're losing numbers. This is a drastic decline in the number of people who are participating in the Jaycees, in the Lions Club, Kiwanis, the Rotary. We're going to go through kind of take an assessment of the state of things right now with these volunteer organizations. And I wanted to do this show because I was interviewed a few weeks back on for a TV piece, and it was about youth violence. And one of the questions that the reporter asked was, so what can be done to respond to this, right? To decrease youth violence. And I said, one of the things that we know in youth violence is that if youth have a mentor, an adult, or that they're involved in community activities, their likelihood of being involved in community violence or violence toward others decreases. So, but I didn't have the second piece of that. I could only say, per the studies from the CDC connectedness studies. So I'm like, I want to go in and dig and pull the numbers out, because what's been happening with these civic organizations, because I grew up in a town, 1,200 people, and we had a very active Lions Club and Jaycees, and I'm going to say Kiwanis, Rotary. I mean, all these things were there. And, now I was checking up, and they're still there, but kind of in name only. So, but before I go any further, I want to do a shout out and acknowledgement to everybody here. Thank you to Andrew, to Ting Ting, to apparently Spambot Fodder. And that is not a spam bot. So don't put spam bot fodder because that person has communicated with me by email, and so appreciative that they're here. So Toy Town, Robert, Solitude, Vanessa, and wow. So yeah, thank Bolo. All right, thank you for joining me here on this Monday evening. I'm thinking I was reading 2 months to St. Patrick's Day. It just seems strange that we are halfway through our winter here in southern Wisconsin, and it really hasn't snowed much. We're far below our snow levels, and we haven't received a blizzard, like a genuine all-day or 2-day blizzard of 2 feet of snow and high winds, stuff like that. So what's that pin on your jacket, the Safety Doc? That is UW-Madison right here. So yes, that is UW-Madison. So I bought that at the bookstore when I was attending UW. So yes, so W. So yep. Actually, I have Bulrush. I have a couple pins that when we were down at Disney back in 2017, like all these Star Wars type things. I'm like, I'm never going to wear those. So my kids are like, here, you got to get these. So yeah, well, ting ting. And thanks for the audio check here. So I have an audio meter up on the top of the screen to my right. And then I have my show notes over here. So things are looking good. I did some adjustments. So it's really, really good. Vanessa saying very low snow levels there, but you've been getting rain. So precipitation level seems to be all right. Spambot Fodder says, lucky missing out on winter storms. I am looking out my window of the fourth winter snowstorm since November. That's crazy, buddy. That's crazy. Whoa, my camera just lost me there for a moment. It's like, where did Doc go? I'm like, right here. Usually the camera's pretty responsive on that, but I threw it for a loop. So yeah. So, well, let me get into today's show, and I've got some pictures I'm going to share from my own experiences with kind of civic activities that I've done in the community that I live in now, as I've lived in the last 20 years. So I went out on Sunday. I got these pictures because I didn't I didn't have any. And I'm like, I don't want to describe these places without actually having pictures. So I drove and got the pictures of them. Um, so civic organizations. Um, when I was, when I was growing up and in the 70s and 80s, in my town, 1,200 people, we had a very active Lions Club, built parks. Jaycees was always holding youth sports activities, Kiwanis, different activities for youth, whether it be, I don't know, building a kite or, racing your bikes or whatever it is. Or I mean, there were just so many things that were in that community. And so I'm looking back and our these civic organizations. So when I'm talking about civic organizations, I'm talking about, these things that we would join, such as, like I just said, the Kiwanis, the Lions Club, the Jaycees. So those are the organizations that largely I'm talking about. So it was the 1960s, like those were at their peak in the US. And so it was when, people were meeting, like they'd say, we're going to meet after church or we're going to meet whatever at a restaurant and we're going to figure out what we can do to benefit our community. A lot of it was centered on youth, but it was benefiting the community. Like we're going to work the voting station. We're going to we're going to be, the crossing guards. And I've got some interesting things to share of how people have kind of taken this in different directions, but it was that knitting of the community, right? So you were vested in your community and it was really something. So yeah, that's what we're talking about today, these organizations. So what is the history of these? So a couple things is one is church affiliated. So like the Knights of Columbus. All right, dun, dun, it's the Knights of Columbus. So having a number of these were church affiliated. Some of these were fraternal organizations such as the Freemasons, the Elks. And here's something too, and I didn't realize this at the start. A number of these were based out of unions, workers' unions. So that was pretty big for a number of years. That if you participated in, there's changed video setting. If you're in a union, that the union would have different civic organizations that they would want their members to be in, or that the union would also support these civic organizations, whether it be with in-kind contributions or whether it would be with staff time. So it was a very big thing I didn't realize that when I was putting this together, the role that unions played in connecting and building out these civic organizations. So again, we kind of had three things, the churches, and the other one was just these fraternal organizations, the Elks Club, the Moose Club, the Freemasons. You could get further down the line, like Daughters of the American Revolution, things like that. And then also the unions, workers' unions. So, and then we also had these other organizations, which were like, I would say VFW, Veterans of Foreign Wars, and American Legion would be there probably on a lesser footprint for civic contributions, but still there. Like I'm just saying, as a numbers standpoint, when I went through this, they were kind of like fourth and fifth. So, but again, the VFW had 1.5 million members. Okay. And that was in, okay, let me get my numbers. Okay. In 1992, 1.5 million members. As of 2021, 400,000. So they've gone down almost 2/3. And looking into that, and actually in 1946, right after World War II, 3.3 million. So, and it's just, people aren't joining these organizations anymore. So newer veterans aren't choosing to come into the VFW and the American Legion. But I mean, it's kind of everywhere, right? With civic organizations, people aren't joining. So it's DLD After Dark. Hey, DLD, glad to see you releasing new content. And so, yeah, things are going good here. So Bacon said there's a, here you go. What's up? Did Key Club in high school? Yeah. So very good, Toy Tonic. Bacon, there's a Mason building where I live. I never see one around. It's a good point. So like in my town, the Mason, the numbers shrank so much that they sold off the building. It was too much to maintain. It was really ornate, like this 120-year-old building, which had been built as a Freemason structure. So it looked the part, but they just said cost too much to maintain it. We don't have the membership. So then they rent out, like part of a building right now downtown. So pretty sad to see that. And as I shared on the show before, when they sold the place, it was just torn down. They sold it and then it was torn down. But they knew it was going to be raised. So they had people who could come in and you could make an offer, say, I want that light up there. And they'd say, okay, $14, but you have to like take it down yourself. And, so just crazy stuff. So yeah, and tell me about some of the, organizations that you're seeing, or maybe some that I'm missing. So I was kind of pulling up some of the big ones per numbers, but I know there are ones that I'll be like, oh yeah, from Ting Ting. And Andrew, I haven't joined a VFW because the ones I've gone to are really depressing. So yeah, and thanks for sharing that, because I'm not a veteran. I wouldn't have known that. But as I was researching, like the VFW, I mean, it was this really strong sense of right bonding and collegial. It was as I was researching and reading quotes from veterans. They said, I could talk to people who understood what I had gone through, right? Because otherwise, if you go out and sometimes you would tell these stories after World War II, people think either you're a braggart or you're trying to draw attention to yourself. It's like, no, I authentically went through this. So that's where the quotes I was reading from, like the value of the VFW to members. But again, just like right now, they're consolidating. They're trying to just keep it going. So this is from Ting Ting. In high school, I was in the triads. I will not let my children get in that BS. I was FOB, so don't judge. So I don't know what the triads is. So I have to look. All Pro Lemonton, our cycling friend here. Younger generations don't seem to participate. We had 2 legacy country clubs closed near me. Thanks for posting that. Thanks a lot. So I'm going to break down kind of what we're seeing. And I don't have like the end game of like, here's what we should do, because I don't know that, but I didn't know, what I'm talking about today, what we're going to share today. Like I didn't realize kind of how fast the decline had happened. But yeah, so a lot of these were still pretty robust in the 80s, like a lot of these organizations. So that's something we're going to get into too, because I read some articles that I think really didn't categorize this correctly. So we'll get into that. Toy Town Rotary Club. Yep. Rotary. I think that is definitely a bot. Oh, I think you guys probably took care of it already. So that is, the bot's been gone. So Vanessa, I don't participate in either of those Fed organizations. So yeah, Ting Ting's got the bot. Hey, Phil Henry, our friend from Germany. Hey, Phil. Most of the medic services and technical relief are community organized in Germany. Many are vanishing too, as people have too little time to attend to it. So yeah, so that's kind of the theme that keeps coming up, as people say they don't have the time. But then, is it authentically that people don't have the time, or is it that there are other things that they're doing? Like, are they working longer hours? Are they, because so this is where the whole time to attend to it it's a hard argument to find in the research. But we'll get into that a little bit more. It seems like, I don't know, we've lost this legacy knowledge, just passing a torch, or maybe people mentoring it, that this was important and this was modeled. And we saw civic instruction kind of be scrubbed from schools and things like that. Boy Scouts, I was a Boy Scout. I was a Cub Scout in Weeblo. I never continued on to Boy Scout, but yeah, well, that's interesting. So you're saying your medic services, your technical, because I have something that's going to play off the medic services in the Lions Club here in a little bit, are mostly community organized, but those are decreasing because of time. So like, what's been done to counter that from your perspective? And part of it is what I've been seeing is like some of these some approaches are to like pay people. I'm not saying these organizations are paying people, but like the article and the research approaches are like, well, maybe people need like incentives, or maybe there needs to be like a tax incentive if you are a member of a group and you don't. Well, then it gets so beyond like the intent of the group and all of that. If you have to really give people a cupcake for everything that they do, but yeah, is the Glowies a civic organization, Martin? I don't believe so, but VFW and VA are disappointment. That's from Ting Ting to Vanessa. Swamp Dog Armory, evening at Safety Doc. Evening, Swamp Dog Armory. Hope all is well. You're going to have some cold weather headed your way next week, because we are going to be quickly plunging down to about 0 here, which is actually good. I've been, heating my house with wood, and my fireplace, I've been burning so much wood this year that I had a couple instances where the fireplace like starts to glow and then I have to like back off and watch it. But we have this pad, the cushion pad that goes around the hearth, so in front of the fireplace. So we had it there when the kids were young, so if they fell, like they wouldn't hit their head on the stone and stuff like that. So, but I looked at it this morning, and I'm like, it kind of baked on one side, and that's about 18 inches away from the windows on the stove. So I'm like, oh, well, I mean, we've had it up there for a long time. And, but I'm like, I guess I might have to take it off after this year. But I kind of like it on there. I actually kind of like the look of it, but it's like just crisp on one end. So it's just kind of, I don't know, it's kind of baked. Yeah. This is Toy Town wrote lazy and technological consumption as reasons for why we don't have the participation in these groups, which could be like, this is Vanessa using VA since 91. I exist without them. So, All Pro Lemonton wrote, less stay-at-home parents, having stay-at-home parents allowed more involvement. I think you're right with that. That would be my face validity take on this. And again, I didn't necessarily try to depict what the research or articles are going, because I'll tell you what they did. Like, I've got some talking points I'll get through, but I don't have like a solution for this. But I think you're right with that. That would be something to look at, right? If we were to build out constructs right now, research constructs, and say, why aren't people involved? So are you saying, All Pro Lemonton, that having a parent at home would allow the other parent to participate? Or, so I'm trying to figure out, like, if a parent is a member of Jaycees or Lions Club, like how might that look? Martin wrote, I was a Boy Scout and Civil Air Patrol. I think my grandfather was Civil Air Patrol. I'm pretty sure that we have like the patches from his Civil Air Patrol days. So that is cool. Hey, it's Mick Joe or MK Joe. Good evening. Phil wrote, we tried to counter it with a lot more. This is in Germany, civic organizations, again, medic, more marketing here, but in my eyes, it's misdirected. It presents as something way more exciting than it is. So many jump off during months. That's a good point, right? So when you get into this marketing for these groups, right? I remember how the Army used to be all you can be in the U.S. Army. And those commercials were awesome, like, because those were just fascinating, 45 seconds of things that you're watching people do. And then it probably wasn't like that. I remember a fire department close to me was doing a commercial. They had it up on their website for like why to join the fire department, and it was all just like, so you could run down to the department to get the fire trucks out and sirens and things like that, and so it was all this high, fast-paced music, high drama, and it's like, that's most of firefighting isn't that, but yeah, so this whole misdirection thing is really happening. Philly, good point right there, because one of the things, a common theme that I found was all of these groups, like the Lions Club, the Jaycees, Rotary, they're trying to go online. They're trying to have a social media presence, and they're trying to move to an online platform, because they're thinking it's the last thing they can do to survive, because people aren't coming in person. So maybe we can do like the online membership and metaverse equivalent of a Jaycees or Lions Club. Like, what does that look like? So, and if you get into that environment, is that going to work? I don't think it will. I mean, it's just like I was reading that churches that have gone virtual are down 65% in their intake for money. And also their membership is down like 50%. Because, right, I mean, at some point, people are just not going to adapt to that or adopt it and say, like, this is how I want to consume this. So, but yeah, if you're doing a civic organization and you think you're going to become hip for the 20 to 30, 40-year-olds that are out there and get it online and stuff, it's just not going to work. So Baker note, we had a martial arts school. Closest I had a group was my martial arts school. So yeah. So, well, let's get into, well, actually, let me, from Martin here, and then I want to make sure I get through my points, and then we'll, Martin wrote, weren't a lot of these organizations a way for a man to get away from his wife and the kids without getting accused of going to the bar? Who knows? I remember watching the Honeymooners with Ralph and Norton, and there were a few episodes that go like Elks Club or Moose Club, and then it'd all be crazy, funny stuff, or like even Happy Days, like Richie's dad, Mr. C, like was a member of the one club. So, and those fraternal clubs, yeah, just having a fun, crazy time without, these constructive things like that you're doing, but just, yeah, it wasn't tense. Like everything wasn't measured and politically charged, I guess, as it is today. At least that's my take on things. So let's talk about the Jaycees. So I was researching specifically Rotary, Kiwanis, Lions Club, Jaycees, and Optimists. Those were some of the bigger groups. They were, again, 1960s through 1980s were their heydays. And the Jaycees was founded in 1920. So I'm saying Jaycees because when I grew up, we had a very functional Jaycees in my town of 1,200 people. And we moved here, there was a very active Jaycees, which I searched for online in both my hometown and for right here. And I couldn't find anything current. It seems like the Jaycees in my area right now, so we have a community of 10,000 people. It seems like the Jaycees has been absorbed into a larger regional Jaycees because I saw some activity where it was kind of like covering the area. So, and then in my hometown, yeah, it was pretty small. I don't know what they had going on, but it was nothing like it was when I was a kid. So the Jaycees were founded in 1920. It was a leadership and training purpose for the civic organization. It was centered on people ages 18 through 40. So again, 18 through 40. So it's basically what it was, the Jaycees, is it's kind of turning over the keys of leadership to the community, to you, right? Hey, 18 to 40-year-old, like, you're going to step up and lead. We're going to transfer the knowledge, our community knowledge into you. So, and then it teaches these people how to lead, how to be a part of a group, how to make decisions, how to contribute, how to vest into their community. And while they're young, like too, while they have families. So if they're fixing a park up or something like that, they're seeing that their own families are having some benefit from this. So the at its peak, there were 360,000 people in 1976 in the Jaycees at its peak. Today, there are 12,000 members in the Jaycees. So one thing I wrote in the blog post, and I'm going to say it now because I think this is a good piece of writing. So I put, Doc recalls the village Jaycees chapter building a playground near the river in the community of 1,200, where he was raised in northern Wisconsin. The park is still there, noted Doc. The Jaycees and other civic organizations' names and logos adorn the welcome to town signs, but for practical purposes, the organizations are extinct. Maybe their endowment funds, maybe their endowment funds their fee for the placards on the main roads heading into town. So I went out and I checked, like, our town has all of these organizations. right, and where I'm at, and then my hometown still has these, but they're just they're there on the signs. They're really not there like they were, right, 20 plus years ago. So loss, my thought is loss of vesting decreases the community connectedness. So this is a big thing that we're seeing. This was something I also found to be very, I would say, I don't know, alarming in the way that articles and research were written on this topic of decrease in civic organization participation. So basically, numerous articles were saying, these groups need to focus on the fulfillment of the members, right? Of each person has to feel fulfilled. And I think that's this real solipsism approach, right? Like, I'm a part of this, and so it's pulling the spotlight onto yourself. And if I'm, it's like this organization exists because of what I contribute to it, and I think that's a narrow, incomplete approach. Like, I don't agree with that at all. The organization is the organization. It's what does stuff. You contribute into that, and actually, maybe the people that do the most powerful contributions are the ones that aren't in the spotlight. The ones who are more like mentors. But anyway, here's what I would find a lot. I'm going to come back over to chat in a second. Here's what I would find a lot. Articles that would talk about civic organizations, and they would talk about how they benefited the volunteers, but not how they would benefit like the community. So it's totally like, I'm a member of the Lions Club because it does this for me. I'm a member of the Jaycees because it does this. This is the way that the articles were written. So I'm like, this is crazy. So here we go. The Mayo Clinic Health System says volunteering reduces stress levels and the risk of depression. Volunteers often learn valuable life and job skills while staying physically and mentally active. Nothing to complain with there, right? The Mayo Clinic cites a longitudinal study of aging that concludes volunteers even live longer, so they can volunteer more. Volunteers who have chronic or serious illness often experience less pain. Healthypeople.gov, site I never heard of before, but healthypeople.gov, a part of the Office of Disease Prevention and Health Promotion that is tasked with providing science-based 10-year national objectives for improving the health of all Americans. It seems like I should have known about that. They agree, but healthypeople.gov, where was that in the last 2 years? Where was that in March of 2020? Healthypeople.gov? You got to be kidding me. You got to put it here. So yeah, I think we would have heard more about that. So as we go through, again, a lot of this is written about these groups, of how the groups have to have this full actualization of each member. And I'm like, it's just so wrong. Like, that's just not the way that it is. And that's not the way it should be. You're doing this. This is your contribution, your building in the community, right? The stuff that I don't know. Maybe I'm just reading that wrong. But so the benefit to the community, here's what I wrote. Beyond enriching each individual member, projects benefit greater community and manifestations of parks or mentoring, or different activities, the Kiwanis activities for kids, like setting up like basketball, free throw contests, things like that. So a Lions Club, get this, a Lions Club, I believe it's Windsor Locks, Connecticut. Somebody might be able to confirm that for me, but which has a population of 12,613, Windsor Locks, Connecticut. The issue was the ambulance service, the volunteer ambulance service was, I guess, inconsistent, not what it needed to be. And the Lions Club decided this is going to be one of our civic contributions. Our members are going to become trained to operate the volunteer ambulance service. That was in 2019, and they did it. So yeah, so these things still exist. They just don't exist to the levels. Now imagine if we had more of those things, but I thought that was really interesting. So let's go over to the comments. Phil is saying, and let me get caught up here with chats. There's two ways you can participate, active or passive, by paying donations, like hammering the Wehrman, Emma Eisen. In the last years, a lot of scandals pop up that showed people scamming. Ooh, that hurts. Yeah, right. So if people don't trust it, man, they're just not going to be a part of it. We had a banker, this is from Vanessa, we had a banker who embezzled money from our Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. She sits in prison still. Oh my God. So this is a really good point. That the loss of trust in these organizations, right? The large scandals that have come out with some of these organizations, and just in general. So I'm not saying any specific organizations, but it hurts as a volunteer organization if other volunteer organizations at any level have this stuff happening, because then people are like, well, how do I make sure like it's worth giving my time to the Jaycees? Or and part of it is, I think this is, it's also mysterious and almost intimidating. Like I don't know what our local Elks does, or I don't know how. I know there's a building. Like I drove past. I don't know if they still meet, but I don't know what these groups do or how you become a part of them. Or so like I haven't even seen that. Youth. I'm just thinking like how do I even become aware as someone in my community who could contribute that what the groups are and what they do. So the Grand Poobah, that was from Happy Days. Yeah, I remember that. Bacon said, well, given what's been going on past 2 years, online might be one of the ways to stay as a group. Good thing the internet isn't something that can be shut off or anything. Yeah. So I think it has accelerated these traditional service groups to move to online, to try to keep their membership. But then I met with I met with a group member, I think on Saturday morning. And I said, what's the deal with going virtual for your group? And he said, so guys like my age and stuff like that. And he goes, it's to try to keep people around. But he goes, really, like, how are we going to clean up a park or, do something in the community? If we're doing all of this online, he said, we're losing people, right? Like it's not a metaverse. So you still have to get together to do these things in the community. But he said what it is it's, you don't know these people as well, because the first time you might meet them is, when they're showing up. And also, like, if you're a Lions Club or the Jaycees and that, I would think today you'd have to have a background check on members, right? If you're formally chartered as one of these groups, Knights of Columbus and thing, you'd have to have that. So just having online group or, people showing up, it wouldn't work. I mean, these groups are typically much more organized and they have much more short, long-term goals and things like that. And they follow their charters and their missions. And, but yeah, I think that would come into play. You'd have to do the whole background check. And so let's keep going down. Ting Ting is straight to bacon. No worries. There was a time when I was confused, a young idiot. So better person because of it. Ting Ting. All right. Let's see here. Martin says, doesn't the JC sell hot dog at high school sports games? I don't know. I don't know if they do at ours. I don't think they do. But the Jaycees did I should say the Jaycees did a raffle. A couple of years I would go to the high school games, and then they would donate money to different, Jaycees activities. And then so much went to the school, and I don't remember all of it. I just remember like the Jaycees logo and stuff like that. And John Rice. Hi, y'all. Hey, John Rice. I put up healthypeople.gov. So Vanessa wrote, we volunteered time to help the organizations in town for the public. People do not see things that way. It seems lack of connectedness. Yeah. So that's it is, so much of what I read on this was you volunteer because then you will be happy. Like you will have more energy. You'll feel great. Like you're a super person. And it wasn't that you volunteer to be the recipient of passing of knowledge from other people and that you can contribute, to things. It was all like the moment you get into these, what flows into you, right? From becoming a member. Like, you get to wear a cool jacket, and you get, a lapel pin right here. And I mean, it's really strange framing. And I found that across so many articles and research studies that I'm like, this is just, again, it's just wrong, but maybe it's the way that things are done today. So this is DLD. I definitely trust any government health website, 100%. So the healthy gov. What is so ironic for me is, when I wrote the Velocity of Information, one of the chapter centers on this Army civilian health or fitness program, Army civilian fitness program back in 2015. It was online, stuff like that. And I said, at the start of the pandemic, March 2020 and April 2020, that should have gone mainstream for everybody. Like, everybody should have had an account, and you'd log in and you could do this at least for like a month or a couple months, right? And I didn't even know this existed. And some writing about it, I'm like, well, this is, we didn't have any of that coming out, because we know, like, research, activity, fitness makes your immune system stronger, like those things. So I never came across this healthy, people.gov. I didn't even know that existed until I researched this. But Phil Henry wrote, another thing that has lost sense of community and friendship everywhere. Yeah, people want to stay in their informative and financial bubble. There's no community here anymore, only competition. So this came out as I did more research. People want to see how there's a competitive side now of when they believe they're going to be in organizations, and they also want to know, like, how much money the organization will earn. So, like, people, you're right, Phil. So it's different. People, they are solely like they want to be a part of a powerful group because they feel it makes them powerful. And they're more concerned with, like, well, how much money does my group make if I'm a member of it? Like, what's the financial statement, or it's really weird, like, to see this, but yeah, it is people. And there was also something of saying, when people would go and get jobs, and where you'd again, we talked about how workers unions contributed a lot, either in kind or in actual, worker time, to the civic organizations. And the decline of the middle class. So yeah, these are big things. So yeah. Let me get through here. Yeah, trust. Ting ting after dark. Vanessa wrote, yeah, our ambulance building is heading for new finance to build a new building. The building has not been updated since the early 70s. That's awesome. And Vanessa, am I right? The Lions Club are the ones who are working with the ambulance service or providing that. So, and then is the Lions Club, like, helping to fundraise for this? And I assume the community, maybe through, like, has some money. I don't know that they're putting. I don't know how it works for your organization. I know it's different. Like, in Wisconsin, some communities fundraise for their fire departments. Other fire departments are funded through the city budgets, even if they're smaller. So, but Phil Henry, honestly, can't blame people based on the last 2 years alone. Would you want to associate both humans these days? So yeah, you're right. And I mean, but I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, how do you do these civic organizations now, these in vivo experiences, when people, are going to be like, should I have a mask? Should I not have a mask? Do we have to check people's status for health? I mean, I'm like, I don't know how you bring these back. I think they were, like, declining, right? We know that they were declining from, the 60s to 80s was a slower decline. Then when you hit the 90s to present, just like started to go off a cliff. So why the decline? There's this low-key argument, L-O-K-I. So Loki, remember Loki? So Loki is the Norse god of chaos. So when something goes wrong and you don't want to kind of figure it out, like, hey, like, we had this big snowstorm, everything is shut down. The Loki, it's the, Norse god did this. So, and then you just kind of move on. But the Loki can also be like, oh, like, people are robbing stores right now. It's because of the pandemic. So, and stuff like that. So the Loki argument on why these organizations are declining so rapidly is because it's the internet. The internet has killed all of this. People want to be on the internet. They want to do things on the internet. And we are in person, roll up your sleeves, build the park, work the ambulances type of group, right? So we can't compete with the internet. The internet has become a big distraction to siphon people off from us. So that's the low-key argument you'll find in studies. I think it's, again, low-key arguments are made to just give an easy excuse. So the internet, so I'm like, the internet, but the problem is like the declines started back in the 80s and the 90s before you had really the internet. You had email, but you didn't, you didn't have social media. So, that's pretty incomplete. But more importantly, I think it's like remote work ability as that started to go, and just when people weren't working as long as at jobs and they were moving, so you're not staying in the same community. You might be there 3-4 years and then you're moving, so it would be harder to integrate into that community. Maybe you're not working a schedule that's going to allow you to do that when you first get there, but I would say like that probably has more to do with it. I don't know. And remote work is interesting today because the thought of remote work can be a twofold argument. You can say, well, remote work, like I'm having to, change my hours, do more at home and stuff like that. But like, because you don't have a commute, you don't have these other things, like you can live anywhere, the place where you live, you could contribute. Like hypothetically, you should be able to do that, right? Like it should open some of those doors, at least for some people. It has removed the barrier of saying, 90 minutes a day on the road for, work and other stuff. And it's like, I can, I should be able to be more nimble. So let's get over here to the Martin Road Boy Scouts was ruined by scams. And so, Boy Scouts had just so much horrible stuff that was hitting the media, what was happening with the organization. So, MK Joe, Loyal Order of Water Buffaloes, the Flintstones. Oh my goodness. Yeah, remember that too. Barney and Fred and the Water Buffaloes. Vanessa wrote, I am an MAA member. I won my membership in college. Awesome. MK Joe, I think Happy Days was the leopard light. It was the leopard light. You guys, this is great. Yeah, Happy Days. So I'm a Mason and Knight of Pythias. The civic organizations are not doing well. So John, and you're probably not seeing the younger people come in. So again, I talked to somebody Saturday morning in person, and I just said, what do you see on this? And it's like, the younger people just aren't interested in that. It wasn't just, I don't know. I don't want to put this only as younger people. You said it, in general, everything is going down, but especially, people in that 18 to 40 just were not into this. Jaycees and Lions and Rotary. And again, a lot of those organizations were meant to get those people, the young adults, the young families into the community and pass that torch, that legacy knowledge, which is kind of the secret keys of how we run, the bike tune-up workshop that we give for all of the kids, and how we run, the different events for like the tennis tournament or, the Meals on Wheels or the community lunches and things like that. And I think one thing right now I'm starting to realize here is that I don't know in my community what is really here. I think part of that is, outside of the signs you come into town, but there really isn't much advertising. And I would think, like, as someone who's been here 20 years, and that I would have more of it would have crossed my bow. Like I would have seen in newspapers or flyers or people coming house to house, or I just don't. It's kind of weird. Sorry about that. Spam bot fodder. Only my wallet participates in the local civic group. Yeah. We have the Elks Club does a brat thing on Thursdays in summer, and then the farmers market is right across the road, so I can get a Johnsonville brat and hang out with the guys for a little bit and walk over. So who knows what that'll cost? Like, that was always a bargain. So Like it's got to be like a good quality brat. So always ask, what kind of brat is that? Man against the masses. Any moose lodges in Wisconsin? I don't know. This is something I need to dig in, because honestly, like I live in a town of 10,000 people. I'm sure there are these things around here, and I don't know. But it's good. This is a great question too. Like, how do you know? And how did people know back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s? I don't really remember, like that. Maybe you knew somewhat, like if you're coming out of school, or I don't know. I don't know how people got into these groups. So is it because your parents were in them? And but I don't know. Donation not tied to my name. Gotcha. John Rice, all their members are dying and not being replaced as fast. Yeah. And that is going through here. Like a lot of these were saying that the average age of their members were like between ages of 66 and 80. I'm like, holy smokes. And again, you go down to these groups that really were focused on people 20 to 40 to try to get them in. And now they're looking, their membership is like 66 to 80, So Andrew wrote, I'm into fitness pizza in my mouth. That's funny. So we had Pizza Hut, I think a week ago, and whoa, like you're definitely not getting the same amount of toppings that you did in the past. So they're cutting back, prices up. It's crazy. Bolo, I'm proud of my group. I've observed no scandals. We get to wear nice outfits too. That's cool. And I do think like wearing, having some formal aspect of these groups and things is really good. I think that's we're missing that. So I don't know. I'm left with more questions after I've done this. Yeah. Vanessa wrote, from an early age, my oldest brother worked well with our neighbor. They ran a cemetery association. That's cool. My dad worked at a cemetery association when he was in high school. So cleaning up and digging graves and stuff. But like that they worked well with the neighbor that ran the cemetery association. So all right. Vanessa, the low key. Yeah. Like default. Oh, yes. Before we losing my voice a little bit, but I feel fine. Please do that thumbs up and watch, share the show. And tomorrow I'll start working on Face Validity Friday. I have the blog post already done for the show, so I'll get that out tomorrow too. And then just as part of the the show here. Right here. Okay. This is the most honest book about the $3 billion school safety industry, and a lot of very interesting stories that no one else is going to tell you. Like 500,000 people rescued in 9 hours from lower Manhattan on 9/11. How did that happen? Well, the book explains it, and it's not what you think, right? So what did Rocky IV have to do with the rescue of 9/11? It's in here. So yeah, School of Errors for your parent, for your teacher. If you know a teacher, a taxpayer, why are there bollards in front of the school doors at my school? How are decisions made for safety? It's going to give you that behind the scenes. School of Errors, Rethinking School Safety in America. If you read it, please leave a review on Amazon. There are 45 reviews, which are awesome. And I'm hoping to have 50 reviews by the time the Velocity of Information releases on April 11th. So we've got not quite 3 months to have that happen. 5 more reviews. So let's get here. So banner's done. Okay. And hey Doc, I'm jumping out for a few to take care of something. Oh, all right. See you later, Toy Town. Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts, Brownies were the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts in these respective. Yeah, you're right, Vanessa. You're right. You would start in these groups, but you would start out as a Girl Scout or as a Brownie or a Cub Scout or Boy Scout, and then you would feed up into these groups, transition up into these groups. So yeah, I didn't think about that, but you're right. And I remember like that I think the Lions Club or Jaycees, when I was in Scouts and we had the Pinewood Derby, like they were present at that to help with timings and setting up the track and all of that type of stuff. So yeah, so you could start to see if you're a kid, like here's what the organizations look like that are out there. Yeah, that's a good point. Martin says, I think it's time and money. Men spend too much time today catering to the children to have free time. Yeah, I can see that. I can kind of experience that too as a dad. So yeah, that is, and it's one of these things that comes into, also decline right in fire departments, volunteer fire departments. People not, there's same thing saying they don't have the time. Bacon's saying, don't think he was talking about them specifically, more the adult organization becoming non-existent today. So, and this is from MK Joe. My dad used to be in the Lions Club. I always remembered when they had fundraisers at our house because boxes, whatever, there. So, yep. So, yeah. And I think I saw like today, like the Girl Scouts, for example, it's gone largely online for the cookie sales. So you just get an email from like, hi, I'm, selling these and you can go in this link and order and whatever, and they'll be direct to your house. So Target is on fire and it's missing a wing. Okay. Whoa. Bacon, thank you. I don't understand, but I can listen. Vanessa, I've thought about signing up with the American Legion or VFW of late. Being semi-retired, one begins to think of new social interactions. So one of the things that I did, and yeah, so I mean, it's worth checking out what they are. And even if you participate in it, you're like, if it's not for me, then you can always just say, I'm not going to continue doing this. So I did share on last week's show that I am running for political office in my town. So, and that's a decision I made because I have the time. And also if I do get elected, there are going to be some significant decisions that are likely going to be made during my term of 3 years in the city, such as a subdivision, business park, a pool, indoor pool, things like that. There likely will be these decisions which will come up and that I'd be able to, contribute to those, right? And yeah, I think I've been here 20 years and, I'm like, I think I know, but I don't, this is going to be a chance for me to understand how my city works, better, how, what the prioritization is on the services. And there's been, I think, some really cool things like, they've done with their parks and rec, like updating the buildings and like there's this kind of like a band shell that they built like 2 years ago, and a lot of people turn out for like these music performances for the community, right? And the parks, they put in zip lines and stuff like that. So dog park and stuff. But yeah, I want to know kind of more about that. So we'll see. April 5th is the election. So I have one other person running against me. So I don't know. But we'll see what happens. Safety Doc I was in future Red Guard because my teacher put me in it as a 4-year-old. Holy smokes. You cannot make a decision when you are that age, right? Oh my goodness. Wow. Okay. And I don't know what that is. Like, if you want to share a little more, that is, wow. Vanessa, I helped my brother dig graves. We used tarps, wheelbarrows, and shovels. Yeah. Wow. Man against messes, loss of voice, sign of the coof. Nah, no. It's low humidity. And because I've been burning a lot of firewood, it's dropping the humidity in the house, which I have to monitor because then cracks, in plaster, not wool plaster, but drywall, things like that. I got to make sure because I've lowered the humidity in the house quite a bit right now. So this is pretty typical. Like, so, but yes, I am running low humidity. The house is kind of drying itself out right now. So yeah. See you later. I didn't mean to delete your comment. Oh, so Toy Town, don't be, yeah. So sorry about that. I don't know what happened here with Toy Town. So you are valued. So sorry about that. And yeah. accidents happen. So let's helpful for you depending on your planks. That's a safe check. So yeah, we'll see who turns out. It was interesting when I went and I got signatures for nomination. No one was angry. Like people, like I expected some people like, I'm not interested or whatever. And some people had these signs that would say no solicitation on their door. So I'd come up and they'd see me with a clipboard and they're like, I'd be like, I don't think I'm asking you, I don't fall in the category of trying to sell you something, like running, and I need signatures. And they were all cool about it. And yeah, a couple people asked me, a little bit about myself. And then, I asked them like what their thoughts were and the community, what are some things that you like, what's something you change. But yeah, casting. Yeah, it's good. I need to do that. And we also, we have a sliding door that comes off the fireplace room. So I think I can just open that up for a while too. And it'll cool the house down, but it'll bring some humidity in. So, yeah. And then just where I'm at here downstairs, it's always low humidity down here in winter. Like it's just, so Ting Ting wrote, the future Red Guard is what all children in China are put into. So, wow. 4 years old. Oh my goodness. 4 years old. That is amazing. So Ting Ting, let me check over here. I'm going to have a special ceremony right now where, Ting Ting, we are going to bring you into the Blue Wrench Club. So welcome to the Blue Wrench Club. Dun, 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 dun. And now, because Ting Ting has a blue wrench, we need to also do this. Ta-da! All right. So let's get into some of Doc's civic organizations that I've been a part of too in the last like 10, 12 years here in my community. So 2 civic organizations that I've been a part of. The first organization, it is, first of all, our very civic-minded friend, Sast One Too Many. Good evening, Sast, right here. Very civic-minded. So one of the organizations was the Daughters for the American Revolution. Now, you might think it's interesting for a number of reasons for you. But yeah, Daughters of the American Revolution. In my community here, we have Fort Winnebago. So you can look it up on, right? Eddie, look it up on the internet. Fort Winnebago, built in 1824, but one of the buildings was 1819, one of the early trader buildings here. But so like where I live was like a real cusp of fur trading with the French. And I live, so the Fox River and the Wisconsin, the Fox flows to the Atlantic, Wisconsin flows to the Gulf of Mexico. Those are within a mile in my town. So those would flood over, and 1,000 years ago, the natives would carry canoes from one to another, right? And they would, so this was a real hub back 1,000 years ago where I live. So let me bring the image up right now. And I took this on, I think it's Saturday. So, all right, here we go. So right there is, that is a fence. So let me just back. So this is all snow covered, right? And there's a road. So you can see the sign. Let me make it bigger here. So, okay. So right here. So the sign says Surgeon's Quarters, Historic Site Tours. So I was a tour guide, and I was also the handyman. I did everything from, fixing hinges on doors to shutters to this fence right here. So this fence, which is now snow covered, and then down here's the Fox River. Here's the sign, the Fox River. So this fence was built by my dad and me. So the original fence had fallen down like years ago. So it was probably around 2006, 2007, 8, somewhere in there, that we decided to. I was already a volunteer tour guide. So I worked with some other tour guides. And so I was, again, working with part of the Daughters of the American Revolution in this capacity with this organization right here. So we rebuilt this fence. My dad and I, it goes 200 feet, and then it actually goes along the river too, and took post and split post to do this. That's all. And then I had leg bolts, so I had to figure out how in the world I was going to put this thing together. So I experimented, and then I found a way to. This is all connected with leg bolts. And all stuff we bought, we donated everything and we worked on it. And it was really like it's worn down, like it hasn't been maintained now. So plus it's no like, but it looked really good. Like it was like about 15 years ago we did that. So anyway, there it is. There's like a close up shot of we put that fence together, and we did that off of. Well, the original fence was mostly gone, but there were some historical photos that it had, where the fence. It was very kind of similar to this, right? So, yep. But anyway, so right there. Dun, dun, dun. Yes. It was pretty cool. And so in summer, when I used to do tours out here, you'd have reenactments. So they would, set up camp here and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool stuff. So let me get us out of that and show you another. I want to show another image from that. So I donated again, not only time, but some fiscal donation to that too. But I loved meeting people. Like I loved learning about the history, talking to the reenactors, talking to people from the area, reading through the historical stuff, talking to the local photographer who had some of the, photography from the early years of the fort, like where photography was exist in 1870s, 1880s, while some of the fort buildings were still there. But so this is where I gave the tours. So here's like where the complex, the fort was. There's only one building remaining, and it's this building right here from 1819. This has a cellar. So when you're doing the tours, like you lift up and you can show people a cellar, but as like the guide plus like the maintenance guy, I could do anything I needed to in the building. It was kind of weird. Like, I don't know if you could do that today, but like there wasn't a lot of money and there wasn't. So like historically I would never alter anything, but like if, something was happening with hinges or stuff, I would work on it. And they had it majorly, I guess, historically renovated a couple of years ago because it was starting to lean to this side. But let's get a bigger take on this so you can kind of see. So right there. So 1819, and the cannon actually was in the Wisconsin River. It fell off of a boat going to the Black Hawk War. I'd have to down toward Prairie du Chien. Anyway, it fell off and somehow it was recovered and they brought it up and put it here. The fort itself did not have cannons, but the cannon is from our area. So there's the schoolhouse, which wasn't there. There was actually a hospital here. This was the Fort Hospital, which I don't know, whatever, when the fort was kind of decommissioned in 1850, they got rid of that. A lot of it, people just took the wood, right? They just took the buildings but so they moved this school and they have, so when you give a tour, right, you have the surgeon's quarters. So the surgeon for the fort, the surgeon and his family, two of them would live here, which is, and then this was this school, right? This close by. And so here's also, I'm going to bring this up. So my dad and I also rebuilt this well right here. And I think that is still how we did it. I don't think it's been modified since then, but yeah, so that had all fallen down. So we'd figure out how to do that. actually had a pretty cool setup. So like you could pull a bucket up, but it will only go like so far. So you didn't have crazy kids like, doing tours there. And then it'll be like, you know, um, but that only goes down about 3 foot. I mean, that's not an accurate portrayal of where the well was. The well was not located there, but but anyway, like when they originally opened this up, they put a well out in front to kind of add add the idea, right? So anyway, I just wanted to show those. I have one more I'm going to show in a second, but this is it's Old Humble Distilling Company. Welcome, Old Humble, from Humble, Texas. Vanessa wrote, home I grew up in was built in 1842, one of 7 in the town then. Wow. So that is amazing. So yeah, that building that I gave tours in, that was built in 1819, and then it was used up until like the Great Depression as like kind of just somebody's house, or I think like a duplex at one time in the 1930s, and then the Daughters of the American Revolution bought it and then turned it into this site you could tour. But we also have the Indian Agency House built in 1832, so that's there. It's John Rice. So nothing in Old Humble in 1842. So interesting. The historic village is something out of Scooby-Doo episode. Something an evil investor would demolish. Doc, it's a good-hearted keeper disguised as a ghoul or headless miner to protect it. So I actually wrote a book. I never had tried to publish it. I'd have to work on it. But it was about, called Past Infringement. And it would be, what if, because Jefferson Davis was assigned to this fort. He was 20 years old. So, goes on to lead the Confederacy, or Confederate States. And so Jefferson Davis was here, and actually a number of very prominent participants on both sides of the Civil War were at this fort when they were young. So I had this whole like kind of plot of what if they were kind of working to, like overthrow and the government and kind of like this Oak Island thing of like stashing gold, because there had been a rumor that there was gold at some of these forts, and it was just a rumor, but I made a whole story, and I would sit down with reenactors and I would go through the plot with them, and I bring like my notebook and everything, and they thought it was good. Like they really they were like, this works. And yeah, of course, as historical fiction. So, but yeah, I don't know. And I shared it recently with one of my friends. And the thing is, like, I just politically, the climate, I just don't know if you could do that today. So our fun historical working sites, Sturbridge Village and Plymouth Plantation, Vanessa. So, also like that site is it's close to where I live, right? So I'm very close to where that is. But hey, it's Flying Rich. Yo. I think Flying Rich is flying, or at one point he was flying Vegas. So Vegas, Flying Rich. So, so I did that volunteering. And when I did the volunteering, I wanted to learn more about history, but I wanted to give back and to have fun. So I was never about like me, right? Like, which is kind of where these organizations, these articles kind of go, is they try to sell this on like this big self-actualization. So it's Alex. I have seen you posting a lot. So hey, buddy, it's Alex. So, man, all right. Going well. So I'm going to bring up so I did that, and it was a critical time too for the Fort Winnebago, because they didn't have a lot of volunteers, and they were old, and just the reality is you're not going to. And they were from out of the area, so people like would have to drive in from 2 hours away to do tours for 8 hours or something. So tours are only on the weekends. But yeah, so I also worked as a volunteer at Cooper Hall. Cooper Hall. So Cooper Hall is part of our Episcopal Church, which is now closed in town. So Cooper Hall is closed. I'm going to show Cooper Hall here, right there. So this is a 125-year-old hall. So as you go into it, it's an open space. Actually, in the back of it is a library. And we would put out tables. And actually, to the right of this, that's the fire department right there. It's a training tower, stuff like that. But so as you'd go left, you'd start to enter. The church was over here, it still is. And the bottom of the church was the food pantry. So I did two things. Is I would haul stuff down to the food pantry, and it was steep stairs. So like that wasn't an easy job at all. But I was, was glad to do that. And then we would set up a banner on the front here, and it would say community lunch today. And I don't know if it was like every other Saturday but I did it for 3 years. And then I stopped doing it. I don't know why. Again, I'm sure. I mean, with family but I asked if this was still going on. The priest who ran this, and he said no, it wasn't. It had stopped. People, it was before the pandemic too. I assume. I mean, it was. You kind of rotate. So there would be this group that would always work. Maybe like 3 or 4 of us. We would set up the tables, sweep, start prepping the food, and we would serve maybe like 125 people. And then at the end, you'd break down the tables, wipe everything off, wash all the dishes. So there was, if the meal started at noon, I would get there about 10, and I would probably leave about 3. And I think at 2, the meal would end. And then we usually had about an hour it would take to clean the place up. So, but you'd have different organizations that would come in, usually different church organizations, or it might be the Jaycees or the Lions Club, or one time it was just a family restaurant that wanted to come in. They wanted to bring in, I don't know, a side of beef. It was kind of like a really, really good version of Arby's. So, but for me, I learned so much again, from interacting with all of these people coming in, and got to know them by name, and got to know this person who was, this 90-year-old guy. He used to be the pharmacist, and he was telling me stories. And I remember one time he said, yeah, like back in the pharmacy, like when I took it over, and I was like his dad's or something. So he's talking like the 1940s or 50s. There was this, it looked like a water heater, but it was full of chemicals, and we have no idea. So we like carried it out the back, and we was hoping the thing wouldn't disintegrate. And then they somehow, like, I don't know how that got disposed of, but all these like stories, and people would bring in pictures of their family, and some of them would be like, these old black and white, and they would want to show you like, here's my sister and brother and whatever. And I think it was important for people also with that sense of community, for them to be heard and be seen. And you could also see like people kind of, you'd be tentative at first, like sitting down to someone you didn't know for like a free lunch. But like I would sit down, all of us ate, we would, in addition, we kind of rotate in and out. But a lot of people thought I was a priest. So a lot of people thought I was a priest. And actually, like, people asked to pray with me. So I'd have to say I'm not a priest, but I did. Yes, I was identified frequently. But so what happens, these things don't continue anymore. I got to know a lot about people. I learned this one guy who worked at the orange juice factory, which is in the community one over from us. He's like, yeah, did you know, like, they would have to change out the blades on like the orange juice crusher or whatever, because like the acid from the orange juice would disintegrate them. So I'm like, holy, I never knew that. And yeah, people telling you about like, oh, like this used to be in the community, or this was like the beehive downtown, like for what they're doing now, and this was this, and you get to learn, I guess, the past. And also, I guess, what people are doing now. Like, this was a big event for some of the people, because this was the only time, not the only time, but one of the big times for them to interact with others. And sometimes people would ask for, can I take stuff home? This was the time I shared this before. Sounds like a nice community space. Yeah, it was Media Hits. Um, this was the place where there was an elderly lady who brought in coupons that she would get out of the newspaper, but she didn't have the ability to cut them. I don't know what it was, if it was, you know, whatever. Um, so she would bring these in and say, would you please cut these coupons out? And I was like, sure. So like at first, like I had to like find a scissors or stuff like that. And then it was just something she always did. So and then I started to figure out what coupons like she was getting. So I could even like bring some into the mix, and I would put some out on the table too. Um, and yeah, so I would just do that. Like I was cutting coupons and, but I brought my daughters to this a few times and like would have them, you know, work. We would bring in, we would bake like cupcakes or cookies or something on the and put. So they would be in that area, or I'd say like let me check with the tables or ask if people need water or just like But that was actually cool. Like I am glad that I did that with them. So I mean, there's no photos at these things, right? Um, and I only have one photo from my time doing this, and that was with the core four people who I did this with before anybody showed up. Like we had just got it all set up for a Saturday, and someone said, "I want a photo," and then because they just like so I have that somewhere, but yeah, I've got. But it was one of those things too. Like you didn't have to post it on social media, and it wasn't kind of poisoned by all that. We didn't talk politics. You didn't. There was just a lot of goodness out of that. So I don't know. So yeah, the Cooper Hall lunch. So two things. So I guess there was a group then, if it was the Cooper Hall lunch um, group or community lunch group or whatever that I was a part of. So yeah, those are two things. So let's go. Father time. Yeah, it was fun. It was funny because I'd be like, no. Yeah. So after all, why shouldn't I preach? Imagine Doc going into full cleric mode. So I kind of I laughed about it a little bit because there was usually a priest or pastor, somebody there, because a lot of these were church organizations that would have their members come in to work in the kitchen and things. But I said it wouldn't be hard for me to do that. But yeah, it was. I don't know. It was. I guess a compliment to have people think that. So, Toy Town. I meant to ask earlier when I saw name. I live down next to Bradley International Airport, Windsor, Locks, Connecticut. That's Vanessa. So Alex is saying, going good. It's bacon, and I came for the sermon, stay for the fellowship. Yeah. So yeah, I'll tell you, like it was. I was both of those experiences. Like I felt, as the research would say, like I benefited from those, but like I think I did it for the purpose of contributing out and gave a lot into that. So, but yeah, the fort thing, I found out about that because I did the tour and I was like, hey, I could be a tour guide here, and I think I'd have fun at doing it. And then this I learned through our church. But yeah, otherwise, I'm like, how much of this stuff do we not even know? And how much of the stuff is just gone after the pandemic? Like, there's no way you could do that Cooper Hall lunch and commit to, social distancing, right? I mean, with the way you wouldn't have space for it. I mean, it's not a big area right there. For it just there would be so many obstacles today to try to do something like that. Can you imagine contact tracing people that went to your community lunch? So I'm a little concerned with this. This is a really cool building, and it was renovated fully in 2006, like the whole thing. But because the church is closed and where this is located, I think it's going to be a challenge, even though it's 125 years old and it's really cool to keep this. So I don't know. I'm just kind of worried about that. So let's go Ting Ting, cupcakes are good. Ting Ting, Civic Doc, please remove this wrench. Thank you, but I have no reason. Are you sure? Do you want the wrench gone? I can. Okay. Are you sure? I can do that. Let's. If you ever want the wrench back. Okay. All right. The wrench is gone. So Old Humble is saying y'all probably did talk politics, just not party politics. There was a time when civic issues and politics were the same thing. Yeah, might have. You're right. And I don't have a clear enough memory. I mean, obviously working at the Fort Winnebago, it was you're interacting with people who want to know about the fort stuff. So I mean, but at the community hall, I'm sure there were parts of politics that got into those discussions, but I don't really remember any. Yeah, so it's good. Like maybe at the fort there was too. It was just when I went to the fort, it was like I was playing a character, so it was fun for me. I mean, it was a blast. If you've got a tour where I was your tour guide, I mean, all the tour guides were cool. So I don't want to give that impression, but yeah, like I guess when it was my turn to like take a group on a tour, like I just loved it. Like I studied it, and it was very animated, just a lot of fun, a lot of humor mixed in with the knowledge. I just had a good time with that. So Vanessa wrote, in Alaska, I got the Department of Defense to finally allow foodstuffs I inspected to be picked up by local food pantries. They took a year of effort through command. Nice sticking with that, Vanessa. Years ago, I destroyed many communities under an alt called the Cancer Mouse. I don't want to do it again. Oh my goodness, Ting Ting. This is from Media Hits. Much like Fellowship of the Ring, your folks come together to win. Yeah, Cambodians have the best donuts. Oh my goodness. 2 tobacco barns in town were picked and moved last summer. That was fun to see. Yeah, we actually have tobacco barns here in Wisconsin. So, and that's kind of neat. John, yeah. Send some of those donuts out east. Those barns were old, 1800s. Wow. It's amazing. So I love the fort stuff because where the fort, so there's a farmer that owns where the fort was across the road. Basically, as we saw that fence across the road where the fort buildings, and he found a lot of stuff. He still uses the original well from the fort, but he once like showed the artifacts from belt buckles to all the stuff you think you'd find. But I always thought there was more that he would keep to himself. I just had that sense. And I think part of it, and I may be wrong on this, but I don't think I was. And I think the reason he didn't share everything he was finding over, because again, this was an active military fort for 20 years. And there was also a stampede one time, the horses and a lot of stuff was lost in the river and stuff fell off. But if you did that, right, you'd have people always coming there wanting to do their metal detectors and be on your property and stuff. So I think he has to be low key. And even like when we would do the tours, like you would always just say it's private property. There have been some things, that you typically would find, which have been found and stuff like that. But he didn't donate them to the museum either, which was, I thought, kind of interesting. But he has this little collection of things at his house. But yeah, I'm sure he's just like, I don't want people out here. So it's, once you get there, it's not really, I have the map. I know where everything was, but like, if you're just coming out to that area, there are no markers like on his property. So that's, Phil Henry, I think the role Homer as the town outcrier in Springfield, he was so happy. His hat and little bell. Yes. Talking about the Simpsons, right? It's good. It's good. Vanessa Kitty, Connecticut shade tobacco has not grown in this region last year. the first time since the 1600s. An industry I grew up in learned cigar rolling. My God, that is cool. This is from Bacon Tabolo. Banh mi, my subs, ain't nothing to sneeze at. Good reminder to try the Vietnamese spot around the corner from me. Toy Town Inc., a lot of history in my town, and it's a shame nobody knows or cares. Revolutionary and Civil War battlefields, cemeteries, houses from 1750s with underground railroad tunnels, etc. Wow. So this is, right? So what group might exist to preserve this knowledge? And who might, do these virtual tours where I think it's like Battleship New Jersey, Ryan Szymanski, Battleship New Jersey. So it's, as a one of the World War II battleships, when the pandemic hit, they didn't know how they would keep things going because, they were shut down. So they started to do these shows where he would talk about like, what is the turret and what is this and whatever. And, they're pretty rough, the first, like 15 shows. And it was basically him and somebody else working there. And then people started to watch and subscribe. And now I think there's like 80,000 subscribers, and they have a Patreon following and all this stuff. And people come there to specifically get tours, from Ryan and Szymanski. And but I'm thinking, like you could do little, you could do these little releases of stuff with the fort or these other things here. There's the railroad, Duluth Railroad or whatever. It's up in Duluth, Lake Superior Railroad up in Duluth, Minnesota. They started to do this like 2 years ago, and it's worked out really well for them too. But I don't know. I'm like, how do you interface with the internet and where we're at and how people consume stuff with also people? You want people to be there. Like it can't be a completely remote experience like Toy Town Inc., right? Like here's all these great things and people are like, great. But that is, I would love that. To me, like I would be thrilled to do that and to talk about that and learn and to clean up cemeteries and headstones. And that's something like too, I was interested in. So the Fort Cemetery is beyond the fort by about a half mile. And I was like, I wonder how they clean the headstones. Because I was reading of there's people who volunteer to do that. And these kind of either church organizations where there's certain things, you have to have a soft bristle brush and whatever. And it's all like done by hand, but I don't know. Vanessa wrote, this town is home to the oldest paper mill in the country. It is now European owned. It formed as a sawmill under King of England. Teabag paper patent was held in Thursday. That's amazing. So, wow. And of course, a lot of paper mills here in Wisconsin, none dating back to that age, but my grandfather worked at the paper mill. A town square screamer is what I do. Oh my goodness. Ting ting, caught that late. What kind of communities? So, all right. So let's let me get this. I think I have a picture of that church, by the way. It's the Episcopal Church, which was built the first. Let's bring this up on the screen just so you can get an idea. Dun, dun, dun. There it is. So yeah, the church, and then as you would go up, here's the hall is back here. I don't know what building this is, but here's the hall where we'd have the meals, and I don't know, priest house or whatever here. So yeah, this is too bad because like this whole thing is completely closed. Big sign outside, closed. Like you don't want to see that. It's in front of a church, but yeah, we are closed. And then this is what I took this picture a couple days ago. Just kind of neat. So I live very close to a lake, and like I walk past it all the time. So this is the lake is now frozen. So people put ice shanties out. So this is an ice shanty, this red thing. And the day I took this picture, I don't know, Saturday or Sunday, it was 11 degrees out, which really wasn't that cold, but because there wasn't a wind, so it didn't feel that bad. But people go out there and they fish, and then they take their shanties off. And but this thing will be covered with ice shanties because it's now just gotten to the point where you can like drive on it and stuff, the ice thickness. And then for the next month, there'll be ice shanties, and I think they all have to be off by like the 10th of March or something like that. But this is pretty cool. One of the oldest homes in our city is right up here. I think it was built like in 1840, and it's been in ruins for probably 50 years. But you can't obviously like you're like, what? I can't say that, right? But this whole plot of land is for sale for like $1 million. So that's why this doesn't sell, because like $1 million just for this land where I live is crazy. Like no one's going to pay that. And then even though this like looks like this would be really great, there's like an airport back here, and so this isn't really this prime real estate that it looks like it would be. But yeah, this I did a little research on this place, and the guy who built it went off and fought in the Civil War and was killed, and it's just really crazy stuff. But anyway, like yeah, the ice shanty things. So I thought it would be cool to go and do interviews with people who do the ice fishing stuff. But I don't know if I want to do the interview thing because the rights and all that stuff, like interviewing people. But hey, it's Brian Bowden, who you can read about Brian Bowden in The Velocity of Information, releasing April 11th. So it's a great chapter. Brian wrote, lots of religious institutions are closing because many individuals are finding out that they can talk to God on their own. So Brian, I'm glad that you posted that because at the start of the show, religious organizations had a big role in driving these civic organizations, and then fraternal organizations, and then also unions. So like I'm listening to this podcast, and it's two younger priests. I think these guys are like in their 30s, and they try to like wrap their minds around these contemporary issues. And I emailed them a few days ago, and I said, I'd love to be like on your show and have this, because like in my research for the book, like this whole thing of agency and purpose, and just as our worlds become more automated, as people live longer, as we have more government talk about UFOs and things like that, like how does the church navigate this? I guess, what is your appeal? Like, what is your sales pitch? If you have to look at it that way versus everything else that's going on in people's lives. And, so I haven't heard back from them. I don't know. I've listened to some of their stuff, and I'm like, I think it would be a great question to ask, like, as young priests, like, how do you make the church appealing to people? I guess young people, or all people, like, I don't know. But yeah, so I don't know, man. Very true. Sorry, I missed you yesterday, by the way. So, and same for the middle age now, since they didn't when they were younger. Yeah. So, and I think we're going to get into, so the end question on with the whole thing with civic organizations decline is like, what stops it, or where do things go? Well, I don't know, right? I don't think it stops because where are things going, right? This big push toward a metaverse, and a lot of these things will resurface. They'll be rebadged in a metaverse type thing. There'll be a metaverse Lions Club. They'll do it because they'll think that's what they have to do to connect up with younger people and keep their organizations alive. And I think you'll find out, like, obviously it's not going to work, right? These are organizations that have to have an authentic experience component with them. You can't have a metaverse experience which is going to then lead to building a park. I mean, again, it could, but these organizations are going to have background checks for memberships, and part of it is just people online. It's going to be really hard. So will these organizations just be gone? Are we going to get to a point where you'll have some larger ones, or ones that have really been strongly embedded into areas will survive, and otherwise they'll be gone? And at what point does the national charter get too much to maintain or whatever, and they just dissolve it? Or are you going to see some corporate partnership going on with this? Is it going to be the Lions Club brought to you by Costco? Or it is the Jaycees by Walmart or something like this. Are you going to see some weird pairing, couplings of these organizations as a last ditch for survival? I'm not saying these organizations aren't worthy. Not at all. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, I'm talking about the decline, which, I researched and which we all know is evident. And, probably like all of us, if we just, are we participating in any of these groups right now? So yeah, I just don't know. I don't anticipate these are going to be sustained. And I think it's going to come down to really kind of small organic groups, to keep alive the local history, or to keep alive the basketball tournaments or the things like that. So, this is I think pretty funny here. John writes, the JC is brought to you by Pennies. My fellow JC Penny was a Mason. Could be the Masons brought to you by JC Penny. So but I also think you're going to see some really desperate missteps by some of these organizations, because it's not their native area. So they're going to try to become hip to, right. They're going to try to take on this persona and it's going to look bad at the end. So I don't know. I didn't get there on the research. I just wanted to look at the numbers, because when I was doing that interview for that TV piece, and I was talking about this connection and mentoring and stuff, and then I was like, I don't. If the person would have asked me, well, so what's the trend in that? I could say going down. It's a trend line of declining. But I didn't know more than that. So that's where I wanted to dig in and say, well, like the Lions Club had this many people, and the Jaycees, and it was really kind of the 60s, and the membership, they were trying to focus on 18 to 40-year-olds to kind of pass the baton. Now the people who are in these groups are age 66 to 80. And so, if you're, who are your mentors? Who's passing on that kind of community knowledge? And we're all getting closer into our own, like, how many of us leave our homes, right? How many, or, we're really interacting with people around us. Some of the stuff, I've been here 20 years, and when I was getting my nomination papers signed, that was the first time I ever met some of those people. Like, for most of those people, I had no idea, even though they weren't far from me. So, Spambot Fodder said, I've left my faith, too much corruption and too little evidence. So, and a question of how many, when does faith, and when do these organizations, how do they navigate political climate and positionality with that? I don't know. It's really tough. Bolo, I'm willing to get a background check to be a member of my community. Divide, conquer, together we're stronger. Yep. So, and I think right. And I don't know if the background check would eliminate a lot of people. I think it's more steps to keep these organizations going. And then especially if you start to move part of it online, it's like, who's the one doing the background checks? And, because somebody has to be assigned these roles, and so I think that's going to be I think when you go to this hybrid model of eventually of half-time online and half-time in person, those will be hard to maintain, even though momentum on those for our Jaycees and a Lions Club and a Rotary. And so it's hard to believe like all these organizations existed. Wonder what else will be destroyed. So yeah. Yeah, it is. It's really, really astounding to look at. And because I think pulling out these organizations has just been a huge weakening of social connectedness and vetting. So, and again, you're less likely to, as a student or as a kid or whatever, if you have a mentor, you're less likely to be involved in violence. Vanessa wrote, my job requires background checks, as did my military services. My clearances from then are still in effect. They are for life. Wow. Andrew, kind of ironic how the Boy Scouts are shrinking when the amount of men are also shrinking. It is. No, you're right. There is an irony that I remember as a scout, we built this time of year, we built igloos, and you'd need to stay in these igloos. It wasn't an overnight thing, but it would be like you'd build them and you'd have to be in for like 2 hours or something. And you'd measure the temperature in the igloo and, how to build these. And you'd work with, some adults, the scout leaders or whatever, older scouts, and you'd be broken up into team, Boy Scout, Weeplos, and the Cub Scouts and Scoutmasters. And then, yeah, it was this cool thing. And then the igloos would stay up. Like they would be so well packed down and stuff that they would be out there for quite a while. So like the kids would go back to them and they would hang out. I don't think today you could probably do that because, right. What if it falls in on somebody? And I remember I think our Scoutmaster telling us like when I was your age, like we used to spend 3 nights out in the woods and have to find our own, fish and stuff. So that's probably what in the 50s or 60s. So, Bowler wrote, I was a scout when it was cool in Venezuela. Jungle lessons were fun times. Phil, I used to watch a sermon on Sundays in our local church just to be able to talk about current events and see how the present stuff. Nowadays, it's just 90 minutes of propaganda every Sunday. Yeah. It is tough. It is really, I used to love the sermons. As a kid, I mean, we had some really vibrant priests and even as an adult, right? But, and people, but you're right. Oh my, it's all of that gets so closely mingled right now with politics and other ideologies. And all pro Leamington. In Scouts, we shot guns, made fires, built stick shelters. Sad that Scouts are yeah, we did quite a bit of that too. And you're right. It's sorely missing. And we earned the different patches and that, I remember I had to learn all the knots, right? So how to tie all these different knots and things like that, but it's pretty cool. But yeah, all of that is just gone. I'm good with a background check for entrance into a community and address this community work for a FOID card for background checks in the gun shop. So Armitage. Address. Okay. I don't think it's the same thing. I think these are just basically to make sure you're not on a predator list, right? That you're not having to, if that's the reason. There are different types of checks. So that's where they're going through. But most states require all student contact personnel to have background checks. Yep. And then Vanessa, I've been practicing knits again, block and tackle and trap out lash. I used to have those down. I had a couple of go-to knots. Bacon. Anyone remember when Cappy was trying to get his online pastor business? Podcast preacher, right? Or podcast pastor. He has the .com. He has that site. Idea off the ground. Ironic. He sort of had that a long time. He talked about that probably 7, 8 years ago. Was like the first time he talked about it. And then, yeah. So I think it's podcast pastor or something. Yeah, pastor, because then it's more broad. and he had a whole framework for it. It's not your fault and all the stuff, and I think it'd work. It's interesting you bring that up, but yeah, wow. Look at Bowline for Bolo. So, all right. Well, everybody, I will have this blog post up. I am losing my voice, so I'm not losing my mind. I'm losing my voice. Thank you so much for the 23 thumbs up. I appreciate that. Thanks for watching the show. The watch hours are going up. We're in good place with membership, right? So for sale past 1,000, so it's watch hours, and yeah, so I've got about the next 2 months, different shows I want to do, and I still want to have a truck driver. So if you know someone who's a truck driver and they'd like to be on the show, let me know, because I want to. And they're like the interstate truck driver, but oh my God, it's Rooftop Life Rafts. So Robert Travis right here. So hey, Robert, and Robert Travis. There's a chapter about Robert in the book, and his experiences as an Alaskan crab boater. An awesome chapter. You will love it. So it is one of my favorites. And so yeah, the velocity of information. But those are amazing. Plus, there's a photo he has of one of his deckhand coworkers passed out just from exhaustion over his doorway, right? Going into his room. This guy's just like, he's got all of his orange suit on, his rubber gloves and all that from, being up on deck. He's just like worn out. It conveys the fatigue in that image. And this interview is just absolutely riveting. These refrigerators, size chunks of ice off the gunwale, stuff like that. Holy smokes. So yeah, guns and barbecue. Yeah. So anyone who does that, or because I just want to talk to a truck driver and say, during 2020, March, April, like, how did things change for you as far as like bathrooms? Because were you able to use bathrooms? Because a lot of the waysides were shut down, restaurants were shut down. How'd you get your food? And did you have to stay inside? Could you go in a break room when you were unloading? Because what I was kind of finding out is like they were on their own, which was horrible. Like, we didn't have National Guard to help out waysides. You could get a hot meal, get a shower, get some supplies and stuff like that. We should have had that set up for truck drivers. Like, I think Arizona did that at 3 waysides, but like, it wasn't a standard. Like, we didn't have it. It was just crazy. So, Ting, I'm about to head out here. So, yeah, if you know a truck driver who's been a truck driver in the last, 2 years here, let me know. But yeah, and it would, be a pretty insightful interview, because when I wrote in velocity of information, this whole thing of, basically the essential being a truck driver, you just got our risk was offloaded onto you, right? That's the way that it worked, which was horrible. Like, I still forensically can't get over how the government response to supporting essential supplies and truck drivers during March and April was non-existent, and then never came in play after that. You can work longer hours, you can haul more stuff. We're not going to support you. You have to pee in a jar, or, you'll have to eat a Snickers bar out of a vending machine. I mean, it's just crazy. And right now, how are we supporting over the road haulers with store shelves becoming less and less full? It's just crazy. This is from Rooftop. Hey, Bacon, been a while. Awesome to see you. Love your show. Hey. So again, Robert Travis, who is featured in a chapter in the Velocity of Information, releasing April 11th. I'm so excited. And my narrator sent me a message the other day. So, we're starting to get closer to where he'll narrate, and just like, whoa. One of the things, like, was just amazing. Again, it's like listening to somebody read the book that you wrote and bring it to life, and a professional, narrator, professional actor. Like, holy smokes. Vanessa, there should be a great many more truck stops along our highways. Yeah, absolutely. Truck drivers have earned more respect than they get. It is shameful, and no one talks about it, right? Nobody talks about it. And it's these stunning things. And when you read the book, some people, like, it'll become apparent to them. They'll be like, oh, like I forgot about that. How we just, offloaded all this responsibility on the truckers and then shut down everything that supported them, such as the weigh stations and the rest stops. And so, all right. SAST, I think this article can explain why civic organizations are. Okay, I will check that out. And then MK Joe. Ting ting. So, all right. So if you haven't already, please hit the thumbs up. Please do the subscribe here for the Safety Doc. We do a Face Validity Fridays. And if you have read, I know some of you have, if you read School Bears, right here. All right. If you read it, The Most Honest Book, please review it. So about the $3 billion school safety industry, it's a great read. But yeah, I'm hoping a few more reviews will go up for that. And then really, pretty soon be able to hold the other book. It's really cool when the first box of books arrives. Open up and it's like, oh my God, my book, So that won't be long. The first box will be arriving. So, well, everybody, I want to wish you the very best. I have to get my fireplace going. As I said, I cooked the pad, the protective cushioning that goes around the hearth that's been there for 10, 15 years, because we put it on when the girls are young. So when they're learning to walk and stuff, that they wouldn't, that'd be safer. And, but I realized today, I think it's just crisp. So the heat radiates 18 inches out, and I've been running the fireplace more. So I was like, I don't think it's been like this, but it's pretty much done. We don't need it anyway. I can just take it apart. So, but I'm like, this is crisp. It's crispy chicken here. So, oh my God, it's just crazy. So Vanessa's saying, I'm going to review. She posts on Favorite. That's awesome. So 2 weeks away. So cool. And Bacon saying, keep an eye out on my page. I'll post Whiffers Live. All right. Thanks, Doc. Thanks, Bolo. Thanks, Bolo, Vanessa, Bacon, Andrew, Ting Ting, MK, Joe, John Rice, Rooftop Life Rafts, Robert Travis, and then Martin, Armitage, John Rice, Bolo. I think I've got you guys. And all right, so I'm going to bring in the snow here on my way out. Dun, 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 dun. Safety Doc. Thank you so much, everyone. I will see you Friday morning for Face Validity Fridays. Dun, 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 dun. Face Validity.